Hello folks, it is Friday evening, the 18th of June 2021, and I'm coming from Nelson, British Columbia. It is 5 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. Tonight I'm going to do the third class in a series of 4. This class will focus upon the mental body in relation to the holistic construct that I have worked with for well over 30 years. Let's first do a little bit of review from the first and second class. So the first night I concentrated on physical principles. It is really important to remember that physical principles are the foundation to consciousness change. It's the foundation to the upscale or the evolutionary movement that we go through when we're actively transmuting patterns and programs within our own consciousness. So the physical principles I narrow down to 3 very important aspects. The first one being stillness. So stillness, and I mean perfectly still, not still for a moment or still, and I'm talking physical stillness. We can work with the mind and the emotions afterwards, but let's concentrate first on the physical. So the physical stillness. So let's take a moment right now and be perfectly still. You will find that the first thing that you concentrate on in stillness is to monitor the breath. So keeping the breath moving so that it is not ceasing, and a nice deep and even breath. So the 3-part breath, which you can find on my site, and there's many explanations and of actually how to do that. But the 3-part breath is basically just deep into the bottom of the lungs, right down where the belly expands, bringing it up to the top, and then exhaling down. Be very aware of the time in your stillness where the breath wants to cease. So the breath wants to just take a time where it doesn't continue into the inhalation. So when that happens, be very aware at that point to continue the breathing. That's the only part that should be moving in the stillness practice. So just really concentrate on that and witness the breath and keep the body still. So it's really before we go into the stillness exercises, we say that to our body. We are now going to be still in order to do this inner work. So the stillness is number 1. The second one is the breath, the deep and even, fairly even inhalation to exhalation in time. And the third one is everything nutritional, physical, in the sense of what comes onto our bodies, what comes into our bodies. It also includes anything, any form of physical, even massage or chiropractic or anything that we're employing to help us be healthier or more tuned physically. So those things all come into the physical levels under that third aspect. It's an enormous amount. We could write books and books and books on it. But I like to simplify and render things down into simplicity so that we can really get into the work. But as you progress in the work, you will see how that simplicity can get very complex as you start looking deeper at yourself and how you are treating your body, how the food that is going into the body is being accepted by the body and utilized by the body. So this is being filmed on live on the Gnostic Way page, and that right now is where I'm doing a lot of the brief little presentations for people to either be reminded that have been in the work for a long time, or people that are actually just starting. Is that's a good place to check in. I'm usually doing daily posts, just whatever comes to me, whatever I'm inspired to do, then I post there on the Gnostic Way group page. So that's a review on the 3 physical things. The 3 physical things is the foundation to allowing the emotional body to be made present. This is very important. The emotional body is highly overlooked in the evolutionary process. We want to jump into perhaps more spiritual aspects. And next week in class 4, I'll speak on the spiritual aspects of the holistic construct, at least touch upon it. So the physical aspects are very important, and that has to be remembered as we continue to move through these processes. We will, let me just say a little bit of something to be aware of. It's often when we get sort of physical and really concentrating on physical and upgrading the physicality, we can actually get trapped in that as well, in that sort of, better, best sort of program or pattern that we get sort of attached to or caught in the physical realm. So it's very important to recognize that we continue each day to upgrade and be aware of what the body requires and giving what the body requires, yet at the same time being very aware not to make that one of the greater focuses. So we used to say in body electronics that the physical foundation is approximately 10% of what gets us into the work and the body of the internal work. It's a jumping off point. So when we do the breath, for instance, the breath for a period of time, things start to happen. When we're breathing with stillness, I would say for at least for people who are just starting out in this work, I would say that within 10 minutes, you will start to feel something in the emotional body. It could come a lot sooner than that, but just to be aware that the breath is and the stillness, and of course the nutrition and everything we get to saturate our bodies. And I'm not going to go into that tonight because I've already done that, and you can find a lot on my site in regards to that. So we upgrade our body nutritionally, we're being still, we're breathing deep and regular, and we will then very quickly move into our emotional body. So the emotional body, to just have a quick review of that, the emotional body, the main principles of the emotional body is what we call the law of love. So it's basically what we talked about last week, the transmutation of the emotion using the energies of forgiveness, gratitude, and love, those things that I call the 3 powers. So with those, we will eventually, and as I mentioned last week, it took me many years to get fluid through the emotional body. I found, from grief to fear was a leap, an evolutionary leap. And from fear to anger was an evolutionary leap. And then from anger to pain is, it takes a lot of tenacity. We need to really build our tenacity at that point. So it's, sometimes people get looping a lot in the emotional body. I suggest to just, if you find yourself looping, to really see where it is that you're not releasing the emotion. So within those three powers, that's the powers of transmutation within the emotional body. Where are we not fully releasing the energy? That can often, just asking ourselves that and working with that energy can often present itself then and then we just keep moving, we just keep going upscale in the emotions. When we get really fluid, and by that I mean we have done some work within all emotional levels, those 49 levels that I spoke about last week. When we've done work with those levels, what happens, especially here and up, so between fear, anger, and pain, what we see clearer and clearer is the ways in the patterns and the ways in which we created those patterns. So what I'm speaking of is the duality within the mental body. So the patterns that we're working with, that the emotions show us, are the patterns that were created in the mental body. Remember, we came from energy, which we can call spirit, into the mental body, which we can call thought or vision, in which created then the emotional body, which then accumulated into the physicality, which is all of the manifestation of all things in this realm and all in this dimension. So that's what we're doing. We're going back, what we call going upscale, and we're going back the way we came, and we're cleaning up consciousness along the way. This is the whole point of this work. So when we get up higher and higher in the emotional body, we get to see this, especially when we get to anger, our vision, when we've transmuted some anger. I'm not talking about anger in the sense that we're just feeling anger and experiencing anger. I'm talking about the true transmutation of anger. And when that occurs, when transmutation happens within the level of anger, doesn't matter whether it's all the way up at the thyroid or parathyroids, anger happens at all 7 levels, as I spoke of last week. So when we get up high in anger, things start to get very clear. We see and we have an internal vision of very vivid, movie-like, colorful, sensory. We can feel it, we can smell it, we can hear it. All of these things happen when we transmute this level at the level of anger. The dreams, one of the side effects of that too is dreams in our nighttime dreaming become very vivid and very just so real. And even the dreaming of the day, like the daydreaming or the inner vision, when we take time to really sit with ourselves, be with ourselves, and see the inner vision, it becomes so much clearer and clearer as we move up that emotional scale. And at the same time, we see the duality with which we created the patterns there. That's the important part. So the duality exists within the mental body. That's where the duality, that's where the energy of duality resides. it's very clear in that human brain. What we know about the human brain is that it's divided down the middle, and we have, these two sides. And this is how the creation. This is how it was created. And what we're doing, like I said, is just going back and cleaning up and clearing any patterns that are requiring release. So when we get clearer, like I said, up, and especially pain, and when we start removing those patterns, we find that we have something within us that we may not have been aware of prior. And that is this powerful light. And it's a light of violet color. Sometimes we refer to it as the violet fire, and often it will come as like a fire. It's a fire that has that needs no fuel. It's whole, and it's there for the mental body to be transmuted, for those patterns within the mental body to be transmuted. And this has to be directed by us. We have to make this work, to engage in this work and do this inner work, to bring those patterns together, to bring those dualities, those patterns into harmony. And it's a very interesting process. So the light, when we become aware of the light, it becomes very exciting. And it's like, so we talked about the laws of love, which include forgiveness and gratitude in the emotional body. What my teacher of body electronics, Douglas Morrison, who wrote How We Heal, he used to say that the rules of the game change between the emotional body and the mental body, and that is a very excellent way to describe it. So the rules of the game change from the laws of love to the laws of light. We don't let go of the laws of love. We don't stop feeling or stop forgiving or stop being grateful. They're greatly present within the process of bringing the dualities, those programs and dualistic patterns into oneness, you could say, or into harmony. They're present, but it's really what we're working with when we find the dualities, when we see the dualities, and they will make their presence known. As we move up the scale of emotion, they will make their presence known. And it's at that time we start to work. I remember when I started to see the dualistic pattern, I would see one side, and then I would work with that. Work with it as far as the, bringing the memory, bringing the word pattern, and bringing the emotion together as one simultaneous unit, and then working with releasing through the emotional, the three powers, through the law of love. And then I would work with that, and then I would find the other side of the duality. And I would work with that. And I was sort of bouncing. It was interesting how it began. I would sort of bounce back and forth. And then I would see how they became magnetic. They wanted, at a certain point, without resistance, without the patterns that held them apart to begin with, those resistance patterns naturally had a magnetic attraction to each other. And all I was required to do was direct, first allow, it was like an allowing, and a direction of the light as it presented itself. And the light presented itself exactly in the way that it was required to do that particular transmutation for that particular duality, for that particular pattern of resistance. So it was really a beautiful, it was just like experiencing it. It was directing it, but also experiencing it with a sense of surrender. So we call that making it happen and letting it happen simultaneously. This is a very important principle to remember when we get into the mental body. I will just say here is, I've seen in many intensives that people want to sort of jump ahead into the mental body. We can't make this up. We can't, decide that we're going to do this pattern or that pattern that, that the intellect has maybe decided it wants to rid itself of or something like that. This is a natural process. This is a holistic process that happens naturally as we apply these principles. So don't feel like you have to rush into the mental body. It will come. The emotional body can sometimes seem a little bit relentless in its needing to be released, and that's because we've suppressed so much of our presence, so much of our unwillingness. We've suppressed every time we've been unwilling in the moment, in the present, to feel. That goes into our unconscious emotional body. And so from there, you can imagine how much, and I'm not talking about just this lifetime that we're in right now. I'm talking about our soul history, what we've accumulated. It's all there. So all the moments that we were unwilling to experience, which as we get more and more clear in the mental body and in the spiritual body, we find that it's the unwillingness to feel and the resistance is great. So just allow the emotional body. Don't rush through the emotional body. Allow it to be felt. Allow it to have its moments, and really bring it into the present, and really feel what you feel with love. So let's go back to the mental body. So the mental body, let's go to the law of light and the actual light itself. So the light comes through us, and like I said before, it has presented itself to me in many different ways. At one point, there was a very intense, it was like a blowtorch. It looked like a blowtorch internally, and it had that sort of that very direct, targeted like energy, and it was like ripping right through the core, the center of my body. And sometimes it can be referred to as the fire of the Kundalini, or the burning fire of the Kundalini. That's fine to call it that. It's our natural inner flame, and this flame is not made aware to us. This is very an interesting part of our evolutionary process through the physical and the emotional body. Is that the light, the inner light, isn't the violet flame, the fire, what I'm speaking of, isn't actually made aware to the inner sight until we are able to access the dualistic sides of the mental body. So, we can visualize it, and we can see it in our inner vision. But this is a fire that comes through us for the sole purpose of transmutation, for the sole purpose of clearing the patterns that are inherent in the human mind, that are inherent in every single human mind to some degree. Some of us attach ourselves to certain patterns much more than others. We are attracted or repelled, which is part of the same pattern. Those patterns all start to come one by one when we get through enough of our own, particularly of our own personal accumulated emotional pain. So another way that the fire came, the violet fire, was more like and it comes from the center of the body and moves out. So one time I'm recalling it came out sort of just like almost like flames, but very not random, like a a fire that we would have through like a wood fire that has like a random flicker or a random flame. This fire is actually our divine intelligence. So it knows exactly what to do and exactly how to do it, how much energy is required. And like I said, allowing it is make it happen and let it happen simultaneously. So let me see what I want to say else. I'm going to have a drink. Everybody that's watching live, let's have a drink. I will say here too, I don't know if I can see comments, but if you have a question or a comment, please do that, and I will see if I can access them, and that would be really great for me to have some comments or questions to jump off of. Okay, let's look at so when I've talked a lot about the emotional body going up to the pituitary, which is the emotional pain. The pineal, which is a very tiny part of our endocrine system in the brain. It's connected to the hypothalamus and several other little parts of our endocrine system that the brain requires in order for us to function, for the brain to function, and hence for the emotional body to function, and hence for the physicality to function. When we get to the pineal is the last stop on the emotional body. And it is the center of what we can call love, but not the love that has anything to do with like the emotional love or maybe the conditional love that we feel for in fleeting ways. This is the love, the core love that has no opposite, the core of our essence that is connected to all that is, connected to the Creator, connected to everything and every being. So that core is when we start to strip away the emotional suppression around that gland, around that endocrine gland called the pineal, we then begin to see. It's like an eye. It's often called in Vedic tradition, it's called the spiritual eye. When we first start to open it, it's an eye that's actually looking up, and it's looking up, through the crown. And we can learn after that pineal has, we get to a little bit, some of the calcifications and some of the resistance patterns away from that essence, from that love. We have a lot of fear around being love. We have a lot of patterns and programs around being love. So that it takes work. It takes a lot of work. Sometimes we're very comfortable with the emotional energies of fear or things that have dualistic patterns around them. But when we get to that oneness, it can take a little getting used to be able to, once we access it, to be able to really embody it and really, really be able to feel it and accept it. So it's a process. It's a process. So when we start to open it up though and break open that pineal into the awareness, it's then we start to feel those natural, the very natural things that we have suppressed, which is what we can call the clairvoyant, which is the inner sight, the clairaudient, which is the inner sound. We have the clairsentient, the inner knowing. So these are the things that come back to us. We begin to experience them again. These are the natural ways in which humans are capable of. That's our potential. So when that starts to happen, it can be sometimes, again, it can take some getting used to. Some of us have had those, we've had clairaudience or clairvoyance, for a very long time. And I say, just keep going. Keep expanding that. Keep allowing that fire, that violet flame to really burn away. Bring those dualities into your awareness and allow it to be burned away so that we can get all of the resistance patterns between us and that oneness, so that we can step into our true nature. So what I was going to say about the pineal. So at first it may look like you're looking up the top of your head. And then it's very interesting how you can start to move it in your inner vision. So you can move it down, and you start to look, through, have a clear vision through the externalized, the externalized sight. You can see out, and it just becomes more and more natural as we transmute the emotional body, as we feed the physical body, as we bring everything that the body needs, all of the beautiful hydration that each of us need every single day, all of the beautiful foods, and upgrading those all the time, bringing the body the energy the physical energy that's required to get all of the endocrine system working and pumping in a way that's really connected, and those electrical connections are taking place in the nadis all the way throughout the body, and even externalized. We'll talk about that a little bit more next week when we start to externalize our energy. Once we get through and get that pineal cleaned up a little bit, and get some of those dualities, becoming at least aware. We become at least aware of the violet flame, the violet fire, getting comfortable with it. It can actually be very overwhelming at times to bring that level of power into our awareness. It's there all the time. Just like suppressed emotion is there all the time. And we're manifesting with it. We're working with it all the time. We just don't have the awareness that we're doing that. So it's the same thing with the violet fire. When we get the awareness of it, then we just get really comfortable with it, and comfortable with allowing it to do its job in the internal work. So let's look. I think someone has said something, maybe. Okay, I'm looking for some questions. Maybe it doesn't have to be on the mental body. The mental body, I'm only going through these so people have references and roadmaps, so that we can, just in these 4 introductory evenings, just so that we can have a roadmap of the evolutionary process, in the holistic evolutionary process. It becomes much more complex after that. There's so much to work with, that I just wanted to have like give basic principles and a basic understanding, so that we know where we're headed in this evolutionary process. Okay, let's see what Jenny. What is a roadmap to violet fire in our vision? Okay, so the inner vision, when we work through the emotional body, the higher we get on the emotional body, and I'll just go through them briefly. So the base of the emotional body, that is connected to the physical gonad, so it's testes in male and ovaries in female, is that is what we call our emotional unconscious. And that is, that's what holds all of the emotional resisted emotion that we have suppressed. It's held there, and that's in the base, and that's in our base. As we move through, as we become willing, the willingness is the point there. When we're stepping into this work, we have to become first willing. And as we continue this work, the willingness has to increase and increase and increase, like exponentially, as we move through the emotional body and into the mental body. So from the unconscious, the emotion of unconsciousness, then we move into apathy. From apathy, we move into grief. From grief, we move into fear. From fear, we move into anger. From anger, into pain. And from pain into enthusiasm in the pineal, which we call it enthusiasm because we use that word, the essence in you, which enthuse comes from a Greek word meaning the core or the essence in you, in me, in all. So the enthusiasm is really that oneness love. So moving through those emotions, we start to see and feel more awareness. We become more aware. We become more aware of our emotional body, and it can be very overwhelming as we move higher and higher and higher up the scale of emotions. But eventually, and particularly when we get to the level of anger, we get to the point where we then have greater inner vision. And it's with that inner vision that we begin then to see the dualities. I'm just doing a little review here. See the dualities, and also see what we call the violet fire or the violet flame. Hope that answers that question. So that's basically the roadmap, is the physical, and that was in evening 1, so class number 1 on this holistic, these 4 classes that I'm doing. So that was class number 1. Class number 2 is emotion. Tonight, class number 3 is focusing on the mental body, which is the violet fire is the transmuting flame of the mental body, bringing those dualities together, removing the patterns and programs that that aren't harmonious, we are attached to one to the exclusion of the other. That's a very good point that I just brought up there. So one of the things that we'll discover when we get to the mental body is that the separation within the pattern is determined by how attached we are to one side of the duality, to the exclusion of the other. Let's think of a good example, like just a simple good and bad. That's a classic duality. We're sort of we have all these divisions of like good, that's either good, bad, or indifferent or something. But it's a division, it's a separation, it's a labeling, and it's an attachment of a pattern. So if we find ourselves attached to ways in which we feel we are good, we're very attached to those things, and then we don't see, like we can call those perhaps virtues, and we don't see the other side of that exact same pattern, which is what we could call vice, but it's the same pattern. So it's those things that we begin to see clearer and clearer, and it's those things that we begin to bring together when we release the resistance, which can be in the form of attachment, and something maybe we've lived by, something that we've prided ourselves on our whole lives. Maybe as a child we were we were told that was something we did, really well, and we really became attached to that, and we became, that became a label for us internally. And those things are really interesting to look at, to release the attachments that we have to something that we feel is good, without looking at the other side of the duality. So they'll present themselves. Both sides are there in everything. It's really interesting how we've created this third dimensional realm, because there's a dualistic part in each one, and the third part, like there's always three. There's always a triangle. So there's duality, one side which is represented in the mental body. So there's both sides of a duality, and then the third thing is the center, the bringing it together, and that's what the violet fire does. The violet fire does that work. It just requires our direction. Usually, it's like a direction, and then I'm just remembering it's actually the first time I brought a duality together. It was at one of Doug Morrison's intensives, body electronics intensives. And I don't remember what year it was, but it was probably somewhere around 2003, maybe early 2003. And I found a duality, and I wasn't really sure what it was. And I found both sides, and I found both sides simultaneously. And Doug came zipping over. There was probably about, 50 some people or something like that in the class. And he came zipping over to my table, and he facilitated me from then right through in bringing the duality together. And he was, he's a master at facilitation, teaching facilitation. So I was able to very readily bring it together and find it as one, bring it into oneness. And it was an interesting thing that happened was when the duality, and like I said earlier, there was an attraction. It was like a very magnetic attraction that I could actually literally feel in my brain. So I could feel this magnetic attraction coming together, and when it got really, really, really close, and I was holding the energy, and I was holding the fire very steadily and with all my might, and all of a sudden it came together, and I felt it come together, and at that there was a flash of light. And Doug said after that's very common. He said after in that particular intensive that's a very common occurrence to have happen when a pattern becomes one, when a dualistic pattern becomes one. Okay, let me see if I have any more questions. Any more questions? Questions? I'm really happy to see people interacting. Any questions at all? It doesn't have to be on the mental body. It can be any questions at all on the holistic construct, whatever comes to mind. It's really been interesting doing these classes. It's really the first time that I have, just talked to a phone for this length of time, and I will say it is getting easier and easier. So I can see how practice is a great way to do it. Okay, if you think of a question, let me know, and I'll get my glasses out again. So let's go a little bit further with the pineal. So this is, it's not that you have to get all the way through the emotional body to open the pineal to have experiences of clairaudience and clairvoyance, because we're having them all the way along. If we're moving up the emotional body, we are having those experiences are coming more and more all the time. We start to get, there's the word empathy has been, just made such a, table talk. In the last 2 or 3 years, the word empathy has just come into people's awareness. and it's been really interesting to watch how people define empathy or define their feelings of empathy or what they're feeling. So as with everything, including empathy, as we move up the emotional body, these things change. So empathy at apathy or grief is not the same as empathy at anger or pain. I mean, the empathy increases. And by empathy, I mean our ability to feel outside of our programming. So we get to be able to feel, and often we'll be able to feel other people. As we become more and more clear emotionally, other people's emotions, we become more sensitized to other people's emotions. I'm going to talk about that for a moment because often there is, in that, when people start to feel other people's emotions as a result of them themselves getting more clear and more aware, then they want to kind of shut down, or they want to kind of back off because it becomes uncomfortable to feel what other people are projecting, perhaps, or if there's some unconsciousness around us, it can be rather irritating. It just is when people aren't aware of what they are doing or how they are doing it, and if someone isn't aware of it but we're more aware, that can create sort of a feeling within us at times that we want to sort of withdraw or contract in a way so that doesn't happen. Here's the news on that. It only increases. What happens, though, is that we get more adept at being compassionate. This is very critical in the evolutionary process. We will find as we move those energies, as we become more and more and more aware, we also have to recall and remember in the process, especially when we're in healing crises, to be really compassionate with ourselves and compassionate with all the people around us. Because we're going, healing crisis is very chaotic energy. It's the energy of change. It's the energy of movement. So we have to be very compassionate with the people that are around us. And sometimes that's easier said than done. But just being aware of our greater ability to feel. I went off on a tangent there, and that wasn't actually what I was going to talk about, but I don't remember what it was now. So, any more questions? Keep them coming, Jenny, Sharon, or anybody else that's on. Yeah, so let's just have a little moment together. Let's just feel the energy. It's interesting when it's online. Of course, with the intensives, we're going to come together and we're going to do some sustained acupressure on each other, and that's my role. My role is to instruct, and the participant's role is to do the inner work. So I'm really hoping to do at least one intensive in 2021 and really get people back on the tables, back on the giving and receiving, sustained acupressure, back on the transmutation, which is done in group work. I'm really looking forward to doing that again, and I feel it's extremely important for us at this point to really start moving some of this emotional energy that's been accumulating on this planet over the last year and a half or more than that now. So let's really focus on preparing. If you feel that coming to an intensive, and I want to do, I would like to do two. I would like to do one in the Nelson, British Columbia area, and I would also like to do one in Southwest Ontario. I will be visiting there late summer, and I would really like to do one in both places. So if that interests you, if you really feel that this work calls you, again, I always put the be aware that it is extremely difficult work. It takes a lot of perseverance. It takes a lot of effort and energy. I'm going to address money. You know, we've seen a lot of people come forth in the last few years in the holistic work, and you know, some of the intensives, like I saw someone who was what he charges, and I'm not putting this down. This isn't a criticism. I'm just saying this is what's happening. Someone that I am aware of charges $999 per hour for a session. You get to speak with this person for 1 hour online or on, you know, and then there's other like intensives coming, you know, that people come together, and they are you know, thousands of dollars. I've done that, and I'm not saying that this is wrong. Some of my teachers, like Drunvalo, for example, he saw in me that I was a person who wanted to give, and I was born with this generous beingness. I actually came into this body with that. It wasn't something that I had to develop. There's lots of other things I had to develop, but that wasn't one of them. And Drunvalo spoke many times on how you know, a fair and reasonable charge is necessary, not only for the instructor, but for the participants, because then it's an equal exchange. And I honor that. I do honor that. Yet at the same time, I never want anyone to not have the teachings if it is a monetary, you know, momentarily a monetary issue. So I encourage people, you know, if they, what I decided for this year, just this week, I decided that I'm going to keep the same prices I've had for many, many, many years. I taught body electronics for almost 20 years. Now in the Gnostic way, which is body electronics plus, I am going to charge the exact same amount for intensives. I appreciate 5-day intensives. So my intensive tuition per participant has been $110 per day. So whatever that, you know, whatever those days are, I don't know if it's going to be a 5-day. That remains to be seen. I'm willing to even do a 2-day here in Nelson if people are willing to prepare and willing to come together. I actually have rented a space here that would provide a space for. This room would fit about 6. I think it would fit about 6 massage tables quite reasonably. And so if we had 12 people interested in coming to the Nelson area or in the Nelson area, that would be an excellent way to even start, just with a 2-day intensive. So I leave it up to the people to come, but that will be the charge that I will continue, and I don't see that ever being raised. So we'll leave that in the monetary realm. How about some questions, folks? I got a nice little shine of sunlight coming through the window here. It's a nice little coming right into the throat, which is a good for me when I'm speaking. So any questions on what we've covered so far? The physical, the emotional, and mental body, at least in this introductory phase. I'll continue to say that everything you need except for how we heal to prepare in literature is free on my site for any of my intensives. So How We Heal is the only thing that you have to purchase. And it's a, it's just the book. It's just sort of the foundation book. And then there's 2 books that I wrote, booklets, I should say. And then there is the 3, you could call the metaphysical books that John Ray, the founder of Body Electronics, they're called Logic in Sequence. If you put that in the search bar on my site, which is thegnosticway.ca or wholehealthcenter.com, they are there free, and you can feel free to print and download any of those. They're there for people to access and just use them. They're there for your learning. So if you purchase How We Heal, or if you have How We Heal, read it again. Every time I look in it, I'm reminded of Doug's great lectures. Doug retired Body Electronics in 2007 and went on to do other work. So I think if there isn't any questions, I think I'm going to conclude for this evening. I think I gave you a little bit of at least you have the main principle and how we apply the main principle of light within the mental body. Be aware. Be aware of your physical body first, your emotions, and eventually those mental patterns will come forth. It does not need to be rushed. To do things, steady, just at a good steady pace. And that, I'll remind you again, the fire that's within us, that violet fire, is our core essence, and it knows exactly what to do. Just like in the sustained acupressure, or what we call point holding in Body Electronics, when we hold the point for a long period of time, and I'm talking 2 or perhaps even more hours, we hold one point, and that creates an electrical activity that helps to break down the crystalline structure in the body that holds the memory, the words, the word patterns, and the emotion. So those are the 3 creative energies that we're looking for. And so that's something that needs a lot of practice. And that practice helps us, we might feel the emotions first, or we might hear a lot of people, if they're highly intellectual, it will often be the words that come first, the word patterns, and they'll hear them, or they'll just start coming out of the mouth. If they're, they'll just allow them sort of to come out, and you'll hear the word pattern, and then you catch it, and then you repeat the word pattern either externally or internally. And some people that are more emotional, that may come first in our and I'm talking about even in our independent work, in the process we can do it at in our homes, in our independent spaces, and that helps a lot to really practice getting the body still, really practice the body breathing deep and regular, and looking for these patterns in the emotions. The vision can take a little while. The actual memory that comes in in full sensory memory, which is, like I said earlier, the vision, the auditory, the sense. I mean, you can literally, when you're in a memory, in a very intensified memory that you're aware of, it can be like you bring it into the present, so it's like you are in it, that you're experiencing it in this present moment. We bring the memory into the present. And I'll just mention here too, with people that are interested in time, in the time frame that we've constructed here on this earth and elsewhere, we have these three things that we call past, present, and future. And that's an excellent construct for evolution. It actually assists us in bringing where we're at into the present. And that, not often, but I've seen it many times over the years, even within myself, where the future comes into the present. A future that needs to be transmuted. This is what we're doing here. We're transmuting patterns so that we can bring the dualities together so that harmony exists. That we create that harmony within and all around. So often the patterns will come from the past, and we call those memories. They're made up of thought. But because what we refer to as time is actually fluid, like I said, it can actually be coming from a future. And we don't even need to determine that. What we need to determine is the pattern, and then bring it together and love, forgive, and be grateful until it is released, brought into harmony. I'm talking more about the emotional body there. Okay, let's conclude. Let's have another moment together, and then I'll conclude. Okay, so let's bring our energies together. The people that are watching now, and even in the future, when you go to look at this, I will have it on the Gnostic Way group page, and I will also have it on my site. So when you go to look at it, be present with these moments that we're creating right now. Okay? So I invite all of you people present. Let's enjoy this few moments together. Really sending you love and also receiving. Thank you. Love to you all. Thank you for listening, and most of all, I'm really grateful for all of the people who do this inner work. Every little bit of inner work, every willing moment to transmute affects all of humanity. It may not seem that way, but it does, and it is. So thank you so much for everyone who's doing the inner work and doing the transmutation. Good night.